here's what's most important is that even in all that innovation, you need to understand how to protect your innovation, to protect it from being stolen, and to make sure that you have the total ownership. And for that, we have our weekly segment. We call it The Five with Yvonne Okwara. I have 5 things that you need to know about protecting your innovation. And it all starts right here with intellectual property rights. So what are they? Think of intellectual property rights or IP rights as basically ownership. So it's a title deed that says you own X piece of land. It's a logbook that says you own a car that is KC whatever. That is exactly what intellectual property rights is. It is a form of ownership over your property or your work, your intellectual property, which could be all the creations of your mind, your artistic work, songs, hooks, lyrics, production aspects, poetry. It could be a TV show concept that you have. It could be a mobile application, disease-resistant seeds that we see people coming up with. It could be your name, your image, your symbol, your design, your manuscript, your book, software code, a type of vehicle, perhaps like what we've just seen. So that's basically what it is. It is just saying, I own this, I made this. When do they apply? Well, those who are in the know tell me that the minute you come up with what you think is a good idea, you need to start thinking about intellectual property rights. And of course, we'll get into details of just how long each of them applies. For example, a patent is what takes about 20 years. Now, as you know, there are several of them, different types of intellectual property rights. You have trademarks, you have copyright that you hear artists talking a lot about when it comes to their songs. And the next question, how do they protect your innovation? Well, because you now own it, you now have the monopoly over it. You can sit down at a negotiating table with a big corporate and say, this is my idea, and it ensures that you earn maximum profits from your idea or your creation or your innovation. It also means that no one can steal it. And if they do, you have grounds in court to go and sue and say, this was mine and you had no right to do that. Now, once you have the IP rights, you can then license those rights to a company to ensure that they are paying you the money and the time that was spent on making that innovation. How do you apply for this in Kenya? Well, the first place to start is the Kenya Industrial Property Institute. It's located off Wayaki Way in Westlands. I think just behind it's called Kabasiran Avenue. You can find them as well on Twitter at Kipi Kenya. Now, you can also get started with a lawyer for this process, and I'll be speaking to one lawyer in just a moment to tell you now what are the things to look out for when putting your innovation together. So number one, they say, don't share your idea widely or publicly on social media. Don't send it out as an email giving all the details about your idea. And then here's another thing. You need to document your process from start to finish to enable you explain this, particularly when you're starting to seek rights for it. And number 3, most important thing to look out for when putting your innovation together is to get sound legal advice every step of the way. And that is something my next guest says many of us don't do often enough. And that is Liz Lenzo. She is an IP or intellectual property rights lawyer as well as entertainment lawyer. And she joins me now. Liz, you're telling people not to share their idea widely, yet that is the one thing that they do, right? They're seeking publicity. They probably want to get their idea out there and to start it making money. So why not share it widely?
Yeah, so I think people tend to imagine that, fame first and then money next. But the problem is when you share your idea to the whole world before protection, then that means you give it away, right? It means then the first person who has some money and has figured out they have access to a lawyer, they can, they are able to navigate the system, perhaps they're even in that business and they can see how they can propel their business to the next level. Of course, then they will cut you and proceed to the next level. So it's always important that you protect first. You get that certificate, and then you can commercialize. The greatest challenge has been also because of that misconception. People imagine that they understand intellectual property laws, so then they do not know what to do or they do the wrong thing. And then by the time they realize that, it's already too late. So that, we have to start from the question of what am I protecting and how can I protect it?
Liz, just very quickly, what qualifies as an innovation? We've seen so much that's been happening, particularly in the wake of the pandemic. Kenyans are coming up with, interesting things. We saw the guy who was making the benches. Remember, he went viral. I just saw yesterday one of someone making a sofa bed that sort of, tucks into it. We've just seen one on LPG gas that's being used to run a vehicle. What qualifies as something new when you go to Kipi Kenya and say, look, this is something I've invented or innovated?
Okay, so let's start with the basic definition of an innovation, which is basically a new idea or creative thoughts or new imaginations in the form of a device or a method. So this particular idea or expression of it is what we would look at and how to protect it. So for example, you've talked about patents. What is a patent? A patent is the highest form of protection in intellectual property law because it gives the creator exclusive use for 20 years. It takes about 2 years to draft because we look at the threshold of it's new, it's novel, which means that it's not been used or seen anywhere in the world, right? And then it has to be industrially applicable, which means it can be used en masse. So that threshold for patentability is very high. When you look at the example of this LPG story that you just did, and this particular person said, you have seen it online. You also said you have seen it online. So the fact that when you go into Google, you can see LPG cars or LPG powered cars, it means that there is prior art. Now, which is called a utility model or a petty patent, which is an improvement of the patent itself. Now, for you to be able to qualify for a utility model, you need to improve it. And then if it's a patent that is already, which is still valid, that the 20 years are still valid, then you need a license from the inventor of the existing patent. So the patent law does not make it illegal to reverse engineer, but it makes it illegal now to commercialize on the improvement.
And make money of it. And, when we talk about the types of protections that exist or the rights that exist, we have patents, we have copyright, we have industrial design, and a number of this. And you've said the process can be, can take some time, about 2 years.
Yeah.
And then carry on.
Yeah, so that's a patent because it's the highest form. It has a very high threshold.
Yeah.
Then the next thing after the petty patent will take about maybe slightly less than a year to get. And then you have 10 years of exclusive use over that improvement, as long as you compensate the original patent holder, as long as the patent is valid. What happens is, after the 20 years are over or the 10 years are over within, the patent or the petty patent, it reverts into the public domain, which means that anyone can have access to it and use it without the permission of the author because they've already had their 20 years or their 10 years to commercialize. Then the next level, we're talking about industrial design. Industrial design now looks at the beauty and the aesthetics around what you have created, and that's what you protect. It does not protect functionality. As you have seen, functionality would now be addressed maybe in the patent or the petty patent. We're looking at maybe a method or a procedure of how to do something. That is what would be subject to a patent. But with industrial designs, we're looking at the beauty. So, for example, the foldable sofa set that we have seen, it's not something new, right? Because you can see it applies the process of opening a drawer, for example, and closing a drawer, and that whole expansion process. Yeah. So that's because it's not really novel. We're talking about an industrial design. And an industrial design, you get protection up to 15 years. And then after which perhaps maybe you'll have moved on to a different new design or something else. Then you can decide what to do with it. In some cases now, industrial designs have graduated to what we call 3D trademarks. And basically a trademark is, how you brand your product, how it is identified. It might be the use of words, shapes, numbers, colors, as long as it is not descriptive of your service or your good. That is the threshold of a trademark. Now, a trademark is renewed every 10 years. So the minute you have registered it, you have 10 years to use it. And then at the 9th year, don't wait until the 10th year. At the 9th year, you start renewing. Never wait for the last minute. Yeah. Because if your competitors are watching, they will be very quick to realize, did so-and-so renew? If they haven't, then they can quickly just jump on it and try and register it. Then you lose a lot of time trying to claim back your mark just because you were asleep or you are not aware for about 2 or 3 days or months, right? So that's very important. And then we have copyright, which is very popular in the entertainment industry. Yep. But copyright protects expression of ideas and it extends to literary works. We're talking books, we're talking poetry, we are talking scripts, artistic works, we're talking cartoons, we are talking drawings.
We're talking about songs as well, yeah.
Yes, songs, musical works, audiovisual works. You're in the film industry, you're shooting some sort of videos, they qualify for copyright protection. Even in architectural designs qualify qualify for copyright protection as well as software.
Okay, Liz.
And copyrights, yeah.
Liz, because we're out of time, the one thing I wanted to ask is, why bother with copyrights anyway? What's been your experience? We're saying we need to have people making sure they've protected their work, speaking to a lawyer such as yourself. But hustlers are saying, look, I just want to get my idea. I want to get it out there. I want to start making money from it. Why is this whole process necessary? What would it do for me who has a patent over the one who doesn't? In about a minute, what is the point of getting your stuff protected?
It's, akin to buying land. When you buy land, you always involve a lawyer. When you're selling land, you always involve a lawyer because of how intricate it is. You ensure that you get the right certificates and documents. So it's the same thing with intellectual property because we're talking about intangible property. So for that, you need to secure it and secure it in the right way. Make sure you get the certificates because that's what takes your business to the next level. You're able to commercialize. You're able to get into business dealings with companies and even partners and whoever else you want to sort of collaborate with. And it will secure your monetary value and your ability to earn from this. So without that, then it becomes very difficult. That's why it's very important to protect because you get that certificate, you have your proprietary rights, you have confirmed it. Any person with a certificate has a higher protection in law than the one without, because the one without will then have to go to court and try to start proving their right, which means more money in terms of protecting yourself.
Absolutely. Liz, Lenzo, thank you very much for speaking with us. I know you've heard of many stories of young people who've come up with something innovative and they are screwed over, for lack of a better word. This is why intellectual property rights is important for you. Well, that is where we leave it at. Liz, Lenzo, thank you very much for speaking with us as